Hello guys, welcome back to the channel. Welcome to another top 5. You may know I'm doing for over the next few months top 5 films of each year of the 1980s. So far we've looked at 1980, 1981, 1982 and 1983. So tonight we're going to be looking at 1984. Which was pretty good year, to be honest. Some cool films and big films out in that year, and some sort of franchises sort of started in that year. So it was quite a good year, and it was the year I really started to go to the cinema to see horror films. Before then, it was really me buying like ex-rental cassettes and stuff like that. But then I was working, and so I could afford to go to the cinema, and then I started dating and stuff like that with my youth. So that was pretty cool. So I started to go to the cinema. So 1, 2, 3 of these I saw in the cinema, and the other 2 I sort of brought on VHS and stuff. So anyway, we'll crack on. Number 5 is a horror sort of comedy, if you like, and a sort of Christmassy film, and it is Gremlins. Steven Spielberg's Gremlins. It is a horror film. I do class it as a horror film. It's a monster sort of horror film, really, and so this is one of the films that I saw at the cinema. And if you've never seen Gremlins, you've been living under a rock. Probably it's probably one of the most sort of famous films made of this generation. And what it's about a family, a dad, wife, and a son. And the dad's like an inventor. He does inventions, really crazy, wacky inventions. And he's out on a road trip. On his way back home for Christmas, and he hasn't brought his son anything. And he bumps into a young Chinese boy who says, "I'll come to my granddad's store. He's got loads of strange and mysterious things." So he goes to the store looking for a present for his son, and he comes across this little guy called Gizmo. And the old man's very reluctant to sell it to him. He doesn't want to sell it to him. But the boy sort of like says, "Look, meet me outside. I'll sort it out." Anyway, so he sorts it out for the boy, and he gives the boy the money. Don't know how much it was, 100, 150 bucks, whatever. And the boy gives him Gizmo, and he gives him the warning about Gizmo. Don't feed him after midnight. Keep him away from bright lights, and don't let him come in contact with water. And then he takes it home, and then all of those bad 3 things seem to happen, and then we get multiple gizmos, and they all eat after midnight. And when they eat after midnight, they turn into gremlins, which are not as nice as Gizmo. And then the mayhem starts, and then it turns into like a creature feature. Really cool film, really cool. It is a 15 certification, but I know a lot of kids have probably seen it. But I mean, I didn't let my lad watch it when he was really young. He got to watch it when he was a little bit older, because I don't think it is suitable for young children, because it is quite grim, and there is a few sort of harsh scenes, especially with a microwave and a food mixer, and there's some harsh scenes in the film. So I wouldn't recommend it to young children, but anyone of like a stronger age of like a 12 upwards, who are a bit more realizes a film sort of thing, you'll be perfectly safe with. But it's a really cool film. So Gremlins is my 5th favorite horror film of 1984. So number 4 is the beginning of a franchise, a famous horror franchise, and it's a franchise that I really like. It's not one of my favourites, but as I've got older, I've appreciated it more. And it's the first Nightmare on Elm Street. is number 4, and this one stars Robert England and a young Johnny Depp, and it's about Freddy Krueger, who I believe was like a child sort of molester. He was a caretaker at a school, and the parents sort of like got him sort of like put in prison and all this sort of things, and he ended up being in a fire or something and getting killed and stuff like this. They harassed him, hunted him down, and then the sort of Freddy Krueger part of him comes back in nightmares. So when these youngsters, teenagers, fall asleep in the street in Elm Street, Freddy comes and haunts them in their dreams, and if they don't wake up, they can end up dying in their dreams, and that's exactly what happens. And so it's like a film where people are trying to stay awake, but they're falling asleep and stuff like this, and sort of Freddy sort of haunts them in their dreams, and he's an iconic sort of figure with his red and black striped jumper and his sort of trilby hat and his weapon, which was a glove made of blades, finger blades, which he used to sort of like slash his way through his victims. And it is quite gory, and it is quite, the special effects are pretty cool for its time, and it is an enjoyable slasher film. And it went on to spawn a whole series. This one's got, I don't know, it's got loads of sequels. Now I do like the first two. I think the first two are my favourite two out of them. They're just sort of like really iconic and really cool. I really do like the first two films of those. They went a bit wacky down the line, so I lost a little bit of interest. I think because my taste in horror films sort of matured and changed, and sort of grew out of that. Although some of the franchises like Halloween and that I still remain a huge fan of, but I tend to have grown out of that franchise. But over the past few years I've started to really appreciate it again for what it is, and so that is my number 4 favourite horror film of 1984, A Nightmare on Elm Street. Number 3 is another kind of sort of slasher sort of film, and it had a little bit of a franchise, but not a big one. The first film was based on a book by Stephen King, so it's going to be Children of the Corn, which is a really, really cool film. It contains a young Linda Hamilton, who you may know from the Terminator films. But in this one, this is based on like her and her husband. Her husband's just been made a doctor of a town, and they're on the road trip travelling to their new town to see him start his new job. But on the way, they get sort of lost and end up going through this small town. And this small town has been taken over by the children of the town. The children of the town have been horrendous. They've actually killed all the adults in the town, and they're worshipping this sort of corn god that lives out in the field, and it's like a sort of cult sort of horror, and they're sort of worshipping this sort of corn god, and their leader, who actually plays a really cool role, he got like a sidekick called Malachi, and he's sort of like the one that nobody likes or trusts because he's a bit of a bully. And you've got a few kids that are trying to rebel against it and not be a part of it. Anyway, Linda Hamilton and her husband's car sort of gets, I think they knock over a child and they take it into the town. And this is where they realise something's not right. And that's where it all sort of takes off. And then they're fighting for their survival against these children who want to capture them and use them as a sacrifice in the sort of cornfields. And that's how the sort of film sort of pans out. And it's them against the kids and stuff like that. And so it went on to spawn like a few sequels, which is pretty cool. I do have the box set of them, and it's a really, really cool little franchise, to be honest. I do enjoy pretty much all of the films in the franchise. So my third favourite film of 1984 is Children of the Corn. So we're down to the top two. Number two is another Christmas film. A really cool film. It's a slasher film. And this again has spawned about 3 or 4 or even 5 sequels. And it's Silent Night, Deadly Night, which is a really cool film. It's based about this young boy who's in a car going home. I did a review on my channel, I think, last Christmas, going home with his parents, and they get sort of like stopped by a Santa Claus who's actually there trying to rob them with a gun. And so the father and that tries to defend the family, and he ends up getting shot and killed, and then the mother gets killed as well. And the boy, and I think his young sort of brother, survive the actual assault. And then he grows up fearing Christmas and Santa Claus. He ends up being brought up in like a sort of like a convent with his nuns. And then as he gets older, he gets a job in a toy shop, and he quite enjoys it, and he quite settled down all right. A little bit like Psycho 2, really. And he seems to settle into the job and make friends, and even likes one of the local girls, and all this sort of thing seems well. But until the shop owner wants him to become the Santa Claus at Christmas time, because they don't have a Santa Claus. So he does it, but that's when it all goes wrong. And that's when his past catches up with him, and he goes on a killing spree as Santa Claus. And it's a slasher film, and it's a really cool film. It is quite a disturbing film, and it's one of those films that are really iconic for Christmas time. If you're a horror fan, this will be on your watch list every sort of year. It's a really good film, and I really do like it, and I love the second one. That was really, really cool as well. The second one, I think, is based on his brother, I think, something like that. So it's a really cool film. Definitely worth digging out if you like slasher films, and especially if you like Christmas sort of stories. It's a great film. So we're down to number one. So number one, I think I might have to take the disc out because it's in a box set. It is from my favourite horror franchise, Friday the 13th, and it's Friday the 13th, the final chapter, which is the fourth instalment of the series. We've got to the stage now. Obviously, the first one, you know, about Mrs. Voorhees, and now Jason's appeared, and now he's really established himself at Crystal Lake. And we've had a couple of films, and in the third one he gains his hockey mask, and in the fourth one there's a couple of families that live around that sort of area, and there's like a hiker, and there's like all sorts of things going on. And then you've got a group of teens arriving, including a very young Crispin Glover. And they all go to Camp Crystal Lake, and Jason's there. So it turns into a normal Jason Voorhees splatterfest, if you like. And it's really, really cool. It was the one that they were going to finish because the young lad who sort of finishes off Jason in the film. But as we know, he gets sort of revived. Jason Voorhees actually gets revived in these number 6. He gets revived. So it's really, really cool film. There's some great effects in it. I think Tom Savini did the effects on this one. Really cool, really gory. Some great deaths in the film. And it's just a really strong Friday the 13th film, and it is in fact my favourite, I mean, of the franchise. I do love number 6 as well, but this is my favourite of the whole franchise. And that is my top 5 favourite horror films of 1984. So we've got Gremlins, We've got The Nightmare on Elm Street. We got The Children of the Corn. We have Silent Night, Deadly Night. And we got Friday the 13th, Part 4, the final chapter. What are your favourites of that year? Let me know down below in the comments what are your favourites. I think they're absolutely fantastic. Yeah, really, really cool. Because 1980 and 81 was so strong, and I had some of my favourite films of all time were in that sort of 2 years. And 1985, there's another one coming. But it's a really strong year. I said some big franchises there. You got Gremlins, you got Nightmare on Elm Street, Friday the 13th, all these sort of things. And Children of the Corn went on to be quite popular. And they all sort of like established sort of like sequels, and it was a really, really cool year for the horror films. Really enjoyed it. Anyway, guys, till my next video, check out some horror channels for me. Check out Horror Hands, The Horror Geek, Man v Film, RS Designs, Pizzawell, I'm Mice Lord, Cat Watches the Horror Movies, and a massive Grumpy Andrew's Haunted House, and a massive shout out to my lad Lemon Lord, who you well know now, absolutely loves these horror movies. Till next time, look after yourselves, look after one another, and I really hope I'll see you all soon.